This is my review for the Vinnie Rossi BRAMA. One of a kind maybe, tube or valve preamplifier, or at least I've never seen anything like it before in terms of its overall design, and you can see it on the rack there behind me. And I set out this year to review different pre-power setups, or really I was interested to test different preamplifiers to see if there might be something that I'm missing. Is there still new musical experiences for me to discover? And yes, just yes. The Vinnie Rossi BRAMA is a 300B based valve, as I'm English, preamplifier. And that is pretty rare in itself. But it uses not just any old 300B, it uses the OG 300B, the Western Electric 300B, the new one that is manufactured in Rossville, USA. And I didn't really know much about the 300B's history, but it seems like Western Electric invented it in 1938. And the new version is supposed to be manufactured with the same characteristics as the original. However, you would never know any of this, as the BRAMA preamplifier is very modern on the outside, with the valves being hidden in a way inside, for a super minimalist aesthetic that is very nice. And of course your eye is dominated by the very lovely and modern, I think, VU meter, and that is a super cool feature. But there is a little bit of retro to the VU meter that you notice when you dim the lights, because it's illuminated warm. And you might expect more of a blue light for that white to really pop in the dark. But I see the warm glow as a hint to the retro valve aspect to the BRAMA preamplifier's design. It's like a little clue to it. The chassis really is lovely. It's very heavy, extremely well built, with its curved corners and subtle details. And it has a soft finish to it visually, so it's not shiny, considering it's made from a solid block of aluminium that's crafted into this shape on a 5-axis CNC machine. And you can see this better when you remove the lid, or the base actually, to look inside, which of course I did. I do really like how the spikes that you can see in the corners of the chassis are leveling spikes, similar to a speaker, because I really dislike it when a hi-fi product rocks on a piece of furniture that's not perfectly level. So being able to secure the fitting to the furniture, I really appreciate that. But the spikes are not traditional spikes, they're kind of rounded off, so they're not going to damage your expensive new hi-fi rack, which is really important because the BRAMA's heavy, over 20 kilograms. So that's like amplifier heavy, and you wouldn't think it, but when you pick it up, it's like, whoa, this is heavy. This is like a dead weight type of heavy. And this is all surprising given its overall size that I think is very normal actually for a hi-fi product. So very accommodating for modern living. And then round the back, it's all business with a lot of balanced connections, 5 in and 3 out, which is great for me. But adapters for an RCA connection are included too. One of the inputs can be made into a home theatre bypass, and I was really surprised to see that on a hi-fi product of this type. But I assume Vinnie Rossi customers have asked for this, so it's great for those running dual hi-fi and AV systems in the same room. But of course you want to see the inside and see the valves, as did I. So to do that you have to turn the BRAMA upside down and remove the base, which is very thick and heavy. Then inside there is a lot and not a lot to see really, because the bulk of the preamp is hidden inside another enclosed section, and I was not going to remove the lid on that just in case. But in there, I'm told, is a custom designed switch mode power supply that adapts to the mains voltage, with a separate power supply being used for the front panel circuitry. So the front panel controls are fully isolated from the audio circuitry. The BRAMA uses patented Belson linear superregulators to power the left and right channels and the valves. But But it's really the WE300B I wanted to see, and I had planned to get one out so I could get some really lovely video shots of it for you. But after I saw how they are installed into a bracket type of system that I assume helps to stop any vibration getting to them, which is a nice touch considering the chassis is already extremely inert, being one heavy single piece of aluminium. I mean, tap it and it feels really dead. I decided it was best to just leave them be, just in case, as I'm a very clumsy person. So I got the best footage of the installed 300B I could, and they are very cool looking valves. I mean, look at them, they look incredible actually. I think the Brama is designed this way so the 300Bs can be just centimeters from the inputs and outputs, and they operate in pure class A for the voltage gain, with the volume being controlled by a resistor ladder, one for each channel. And it's a fully balanced design with other impressive things going on, such as 8-layer PSBs, sealed and shielded bits, and more. We need to speak about the remote control because it's also, I believe, a bit of a one of a hi-fi kind that has its own very cool screen where the text seems to almost float, almost holographic. And you can access a menu system here to adjust important settings, such as the gain for each individual output. And I found that really useful. And there is also a balance control and more. And it's just an exceptionally nice remote control that must communicate two-way. Because I'm going to do my best to try and show you something now. So hopefully you can see the remote control in front of my eyes. And if I adjust the volume on the remote control, oh, screen's gone off. You should hopefully see, if I get my eyes, that volume changing. Yeah. There we go, back to zero. So, so obviously as you adjust the volume on the preamplifier, it also adjusts the remote control. Little thing, but I think it's pretty cool. And I'm sure by now some of you are looking at all of this with soft and gooey, I want that preamp in my system eyes. And I wouldn't blame you at all either because mine have been exactly the same. However, those same eyes might start to water now when I give you the price, which is just shy of $39,000. So a huge amount of money, of course, for a preamplifier, which means the Brama is not going to be for everybody, which is absolutely fine. And given that really high price, my expectations are, crazy, extreme high. So somebody might think, putting something that expensive into a hi-fi system, all you do is press play and audio fireworks start to happen. So, did that happen? Let's talk about sound quality then. And I think it's important to cover off some basics. The Brama preamplifier is a silent preamplifier. I mean, you don't know it's in the system. It's totally hiss or hum free, really silent, which is impressive considering, it's a 300B or a valve preamplifier. It's super, super silent. And also I didn't notice any bleed through from one channel to the other if, music is playing through multiple channels. And you might think, that's a given with a preamplifier at this price, and maybe yes, but these are still important basics to cover off. For the Brama's general sound character, I would say it's a modern sounding preamplifier, so very clean with depth and soul. And to explain that, listening to a lot of music through it, at first I wasn't sure about the sound, but after maybe an hour of music, once I had relaxed and settled into the session, the Brama had gradually been luring me into the music through the session with its depth of music quality. And by depth of music quality, what I mean is it really depended on the music. So maybe one album or track that I'll be listening to, I'll be really impressed maybe by the soundstage, by how organized and clear and crisp and spacious and well-defined everything is, always with a nice organic tonal character, and I think that's really important. So maybe some music it was all about the soundstage and I was really enjoying that, but other music it might be the vocal palpability or the mixture of like a vivid sound again with organic character, or maybe it was just kind of like the bass that was bouncing in such a nice way. There was always something extra that I was listening to with the music I'm very familiar with. It's just something a bit extra that I was really, just really enjoying. And what that meant was I kept listening. I would listen to the next one and listen to the next one. And each individual song had just, like I said, just something extra. So for me, like, depth of quality is like variability. I could listen through a whole different, all different styles of music and really enjoy them for their kind of very standout traits. And I listened at low volumes and high volumes, and higher seemed a little better, but not so drastically different that I would say lower was that much different or worse. And that is very important to a lot of people. But I would say the Brahma is more of a modern sounding preamp than you might think for a valve preamp. And I say that because the sound is more about staying clean and clear rather than adding loads of tonality or fullness to the music. And it's maybe a touch leaner in its delivery when comparing to others. However, in isolation, I didn't really notice that. In fact, combined with the big Canton Reference 2 speakers in my smaller room, the overall balance with the esoteric power amp has been fantastic. And I've listened to probably getting on for 100 hours of music with this setup, and I've loved it all. I've been loving the sound of this system as it's been balanced really very nicely. And despite maybe being a touch leaner, it's not something that I was even aware of because I've been so happy with the general smoothness of the sound. There has not been one harsh note with the Brahma in the system. And the esoteric power amp can be a bit of a diva in that regard. It shows you any harshness in the upstream system. So I do think there is a little bit of music filtering going on with the Brahma preamp, just a little bit of smoothing, which is likely the effect of the 300B, although that is just a guess. So what I think we have here in terms of this design is like a typical hi-fi seesaw, where you have at one end of the seesaw a very super modern, super fast, super clear, super clean, power supply section that's balancing with, a 300B, which is a valve famed for its tonality and organic character. And then the two are obviously offsetting each other just a little bit. So you get some of the special character of one and some of the special character of the other. And I think this is very important because some people might want a valve preamplifier to go more this way to add loads of kind of like valve richness and character. And there is some of that here, but I think Vinnie Rossi's balanced it more to be maybe more kind of inverted commas and neutral. And you might ask, why have they done that? And I think they've probably done that because that is how you take both of these, concepts further. Like how you combine them is how you take the sound quality further. And it also means if this is obviously balanced more neutral, there's less being added to the sources that you're listening to and less being added to the power amplifiers and speakers. So the bit before and the bit after in the chain then becomes maybe a little bit more important for like balance and tonality. The reason I'm saying this is because of how my vinyl setup has been sounding compared to the digital side of this system. And I have done a lot with the vinyl setup recently, especially with the Mod-Right phono stage that now has some 1960s NOS valves in it and a few other improvements. And they have given the preamp a certain clean but thicker and old-fashioned in a way sound character about them, which I think is great for vinyl. And I was getting all of this with the Brahma in the system. And good records have been sounding so good, I've actually been enjoying them more than the very good digital setup I have here too. And I think if the Brahma was adding its own character, like strong character, like what I've got with the preamp, then it would be possibly too much. And of course it would be adding it to the digital and it would be adding it to everything. And I think when it comes to a preamp, you just have to make a decision. Is that something that you want or that you don't? For specifics, with the Brahma in this system, I have had a really clean and detailed, really quite realistic sounding treble with some lovely subtle details and nuances coming through in the music because the treble has not sounded rolled off like you might expect from a valve pre. But there is still possibly a touch of sweetness going on, but not a syrupy treble. And there is a difference and definitely no splashiness or zinginess. I mean, this is light years beyond that for its treble. Vocals have sounded really clear and quite crisp at times. However, I've been very happy with the tonal qualities of male and female from soul to opera. and that has moved into instruments tonality too. It's a very, in inverted commas, neutral presentation, but with soul. And music depending, like instruments have sounded really quite different. But one thing that's really stood out to me is the combination of how vivid they can sound with nice tonal qualities. And there's a particular album that I've listened to more recently. I think it's Julian Chauvin. It's got a really interesting cover to it, and it's like classical violin, really, really fast, but it's a really nice recording for tonal qualities too. And I think with music like that, that music benefits from a really fast sounding system. But if it's kind of fast but without tonal qualities, that kind of music can just become like a etched, vivid, thin type of thing. It needs both. It needs like tonal pleasing qualities and warmth, but it needs the speed. If it's too thick in tonal qualities and sound sluggish, well then you miss the fast, violin playing and stuff. So the Brahma's been particularly good at kind of sitting somewhere in the middle, right? Giving you lots of speed and clarity and detail, but with tonal character as well. And then the bass has also been great for me. Big and bold when I want it to be for powerful electronic or dub or drum and bass or reggae, but also fast and detailed for fingers on strings. I have not felt shortchanged at all for bass, so I've been very happy listening to the Brahma in this system. And strangely enough, in a way, that has been the biggest problem for me, because the Brahma has been kind of so good in the system. I've been struggling to find flaw or fault in it. And that is a problem because a review is supposed to be a critique of a product. So it's difficult to critique something when you can't hear the flaws and the faults. And that is because I've not had, other preamplifiers here around the same kind of price level to compare it to. And I appreciate that is a fault with me as a reviewer. And that's because the Brahma has come to me. It made sense to come to me now because of the other things I have in the system. But really, it's come to me a little bit too early in my review lifecycle journey for, preamplifiers and hi-fi systems at this kind of level. It's just the way these things work out sometimes. And obviously you have to start somewhere. You have to start building up your experience. So it has been pretty much in at the deep end, sink or swim type of review for me here. And it's been great, obviously, to do it and spend time with this product, but it's not been easy. But I will be the first to admit that is not good enough. I hold myself to a higher standard than that. But luckily I know a man who has a much better system than me, and I was able to take the Brahma to his home to compare it to his nearly twice as expensive TAD C700 preamp on a biblical high-end level system. And some of you will remember Michael from a video I made a couple of years ago. Michael's system is insane high-end. It's about as good as it gets in its own right. And his system has evolved since I made the video with him a couple of years ago. And please excuse the quality of the few clips I'm showing you because I just shot them with my phone just to show you that I was there and that we did the listening comparison that I'm going to talk to you about. Okay then, listen in between the Brahma preamplifier and the TAD C700. This was super interesting because the Brahma sounded the faster of the two, the more light on its feet, the more nimble. It was ridiculously clean and clear across the full soundstage. And the soundstage was taller, like a greater sense of height and just like clearer edge to the music in like a the way the music's kind of drawn across the soundstage. So like it's very impressive preamplifier, even in a system at that kind of ridiculous, crazy level of clarity and resolution and resolving transparency. However, when we compared it to the TAD C700, the TAD has like a more full-bodied sound, like more strong and solid and more authoritative, more full, like there was more kind of sound, like fullness to the sound in general. Though it was a little darker, maybe sounded a touch slower, like it was just a more solid and more full-bodied. But interestingly, when you listen for a lot of music, there was probably a greater sense of big contrast, like big dynamic shifts and scale, again, filling the room more with sound, but also better micro dynamic contrasts where small things have more pop, and it did sound more like musicians playing instruments in the room in comparison. And the biggest difference for me was what I call like the pull-off, where you'd have the speaker there and then you'd have like a musician pull off the speaker and play in space around the speaker. That was ridiculously good from the TAD preamplifier. But look, like losing out to a preamp that costs nearly £30,000 more, it's not really a loss, because it's only, we're talking about like differences here. And, it's understandable. And obviously, the reason why this comparison was not perfect, obviously, but the reason why it's good to do is because of the context it creates. Because in this system, I couldn't hear, would I be able to hear as much difference as Michael's system between the preamps? Probably not. I wanted to be honest about it, because imagine if the situation had been the other way around. What a great, part of the review, what a great part of, my discovery that would have been. But I'm not. I'm always honest about my discovery. So these are just important things maybe to consider. But in summary, the Brama preamplifier is a lovely built, lovely looking, just great to live with HiFi preamplifier. That is a joy to have in your system and have in your home. The VU meter on the front is a lovely touch. You'll never get bored of looking at that, as is the remote control. And overall, it's just a lovely HiFi product. And sonically, it's great as well. It's like really clean and clear, low noise floor, really organized in its delivery, fast and snappy, very modern sounding, but like I said, with really nice tonal character as well. And like I said, for little old me, in my little old system, it's been like faultless and flawless. I've loved having it here. I've had a great time listening to it. Really emotional. I've had some emotional listening sessions that, have teared me up a little bit, which is embarrassing to say, but it's actually been true. So like, it's a fantastic, really lovely preamplifier to live with. So I hope you've enjoyed this review. I hope you found it useful and helpful in some ways. If you have enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more.